I swapped my husband's vitamins with a truth serum. He took them, smiled, and confessed everything. Then he kept talking, and I realized I hadn't been ready for the truth at all. I'm glad you're here, because this is not the story I thought I'd be telling. Stay with me. If you've ever looked at someone you love and wondered what sits behind their easy smile, you'll understand why I did what I did. It happened on an ordinary Tuesday night, the kind that slides by without a headline. The house smelled like laundry detergent and roasted chicken. Our dog breathed in gentle huffs at the foot of the couch. The TV threw little flashes across the living room wall, weather, traffic, a car commercial pretending to be a romance. My husband, Daniel, was propped up on pillows with his nightly ritual lined on the coffee table: water glass, 2 vitamin pills, and a gummy for sleep. He was barefaced and soft in the lamplight, the way people are when they think no one is studying them. He turned and said, "You're quiet," the way he always did when my brain slipped under the floorboards. And I said, "Just tired," the way I always did when I wasn't ready to say anything real. The bottle looked harmless, white plastic with a green leaf on the label. We'd bought it at a strip mall store that sells wellness and hope. You should know that about me right away. I wanted to believe in harmless solutions. Vitamin D for mood, magnesium for sleep, a cleanse to reset. It felt like a moral contract with the universe. If I kept things clean and simple, life would stay tidy. Which is funny now because nothing about what followed was tidy. We'd been married 9 years. Not all of them good, but all of them earnest. We met at a farmer's market. He bought strawberries, I spilled coffee on my shoes. We apologized like strangers and laughed like old friends. We built a small life like people stack books, one season at a time, one practical purchase, one inside joke, one tired Sunday afternoon collapsing into the next. We fought in polite tones. We made up in the kitchen, rinsing plates in warm water as if that could dissolve everything. We didn't have kids, not by plan exactly, but by indecision that hardened into routine. There were vacations never far, anniversaries never lavish, and the steady hum of 2 incomes that kept the lights on and the fridge stocked with yogurt and hope. If you'd asked me the month before that Tuesday whether I trusted him, I would have said I trusted the idea of him. He was dependable, the kind of man who checks tire pressure before a road trip, who remembers to take out the trash the night before. He told me he loved me the way people say, drive safe, sincerely, habitually, without expecting anything to change. And yet, there was a lightness in his voice when he talked to other people that flattened when he talked to me, a little spark when his phone lit up that never quite made it to his eyes when he looked at mine. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself I was being dramatic. I told myself that marriage was compromise, not a fireworks show. Here's the fracture line. About 6 weeks earlier, he started a new fitness kick. He wanted to feel better, he said. He ordered supplements and a smartwatch. He made smoothies with spinach and bananas and exactly 3 ice cubes. He took his vitamins at night because routines stick better with bedtime. He said that like he'd read it, which he probably had. And because routine was a religion in our house, I became the priestess of it. I lined up the pills, I refilled the water. I put a little note under the glass one night that said, "You got this." He kissed my forehead and called me sweet. Then he stayed up late in the office, typing. That office, bless the door that didn't close all the way. It was a small room with a desk that always looked busy and a plant that always looked thirsty. He said he liked to work with the door ajar because it made him feel connected to the house. But that half-open door became a hinge for my attention. I learned the cadence of his keyboard. I learned the length of his silences. I learned that sometimes he laughed in a half-whisper, a sound I'd never heard in our living room. I learned that when I padded down the hallway and the floor groaned under the left board, his screen dimmed. No, I didn't start with the truth serum. I started with softness. Are you working too hard? Are you sleeping okay? Should we go away for a weekend? Do you want to talk? He said the right things. He always did. Work's just intense. I'm fine. A weekend could be nice. We can talk after this deadline. And I, the believer in harmless solutions, nodded and set another glass of Water on another nightstand like a small offering to a god who wasn't listening. The bottle, the one with the leaf, wasn't really truth serum. I know that sounds ridiculous. It wasn't a spy movie ampule or some illegal lab concoction. It was a supplement my friend swore by, something for focus and clarity. I wasn't planning to drug my husband. I was planning to help him. That's what I told myself. And maybe you'll judge me for the rationalization, but tell me you've never wanted to shortcut confusion. Tell me you've never stood staring at someone's face, praying for a window to open behind their eyes. And then, there was the weekend at my sister's. We stayed overnight to help her paint the nursery. Daniel was sweet. He held the ladder. He made jokes. He drove us home on Sunday with the windows cracked, letting spring air unfurl the stuffy car smell. But when we got back, he went straight to the office and closed the door, not ajar this time, closed, with an apology tossed over his shoulder. Just a quick call. The call was an hour. The call was laughter I didn't recognize. The call ended, and he emerged sheepish, the way you do when you've enjoyed something you weren't supposed to. "Client," he said. I said nothing. The floorboard under my feet felt like a confession that wouldn't speak. So on that Tuesday, I did what I did. I swapped the vitamins, yes, not for poison, not for anything illegal, for something I believed would lower whatever guard had grown between us, enough for words to cross. He took them like always. He sipped his water, winced at the taste, and settled back into the couch across from me. The TV weather map bled blue and green, the storm rolling in. The dog sighed. His phone buzzed. He flipped it face down and smiled. "Long day?" he asked. I said, "Let's talk." He said, "Sure." I said, "Really talk?" He looked at me then, the way you look at a road sign that comes too late, and the tiniest tremor. Was it in his jaw, his throat, his fingers? Passed through him like a small animal brushing against a fence. He took a breath. He said, "Okay." It sounded like surrender. He started with little truths, the kind people hand over to prove the rest is coming. Work stress, money worry, fear of getting older, the small embarrassments of a human life, a parking ticket he hadn't told me about, a lie about skipping lunch that was really a lie about skipping me. Each confession landed softly in the air between us. I wanted to cradle them, forgive them, say, "See, this is easy." But the words kept coming and the air got heavy. He talked about the office door and why he kept it half open. Because he wanted me near, yes, but also because he wanted the thrill of nearly getting caught. He said he felt like two versions of himself, and he liked the one that floated just out of reach. I asked, "Out of reach of who?" He said without drama, "You." There it was. Not a shock, not yet. A bruise touched at last. He told me about a person, not named, not pictured on my timeline, not obvious. Someone from a project. Not a fling, he said. Not physical, he insisted. But you learn quickly that confessions set a hook, and then reel in the details only as far as you can bear them. "We talk," he said. "It makes the day feel brighter." "She listens," he said, "and I feel lighter." He used that word again, lighter, as if our life had been a sweater he needed to take off. I should have stood then. I should have asked for her name. I should have made a sound bigger than the one that escaped my mouth, a small "oh," like I'd dropped a spoon. But he kept talking, that gentle flood, and I kept being the woman who wants to believe in harmless solutions. He turned his phone over and showed me a message thread. Not explicit. Not romantic in the way love songs teach us to recognize, but intimate in the way that hurts more. Inside jokes, encouragement, little photos of a desk plant I didn't own. He'd told her about his smoothies. He'd told her about the left floorboard that groans. He'd told her about the note I left under his water glass, and together they had called it sweet. Sweet, like a child. Sweet, like a nice gesture from someone outside the real conversation. When he finally stopped, the room was church quiet. The weatherman pointed to a storm I couldn't see. The dog shifted, old bones clicking. Daniel looked at me as if waiting for a grade. I had the thought that if I whispered, the entire house would collapse. He reached for my hand. I let him take it. It felt like letting someone take the last piece of your name. "I'm telling you because I want to fix this," he said. "I don't want to live like two people." I nodded. I heard my voice say, "Thank you for being honest." But inside me, a small door I didn't know I had swung open and hit the wall. Because now that I'd finally pried a window open behind his eyes, I saw something else in the room with us, something I had invited without understanding. The truth doesn't just arrive and sit politely. It expands. It crowds you. It pulls chairs out from under every memory until you're left standing, holding the tray. And here is the last thing I'll say before we step backward into the life that brought us there. The truth serum worked, in its way. It worked too well. Because once a person starts telling the truth, they can't always stop where you think they will. And once you hear it, you can't go back to the quiet. The storm on the TV finally reached our city. Rain began tapping the windows, soft at first, then steady. He was still holding my hand when I asked him one question, the one that would change everything, the one that would pull us straight into the heart of it. Before that night, before the word truth meant anything sharp, our life looked gentle from the outside. The kind of life people envy in passing. Clean counters, matching mugs, a yard we actually kept trimmed. When I think about it now, I realize how carefully we built that illusion together. Every routine was a stitch, and I was the one pulling the thread tight. Our mornings were quiet. Daniel liked to wake early, shower before the alarm even buzzed, and make coffee the way he learned from some travel vlog. A pour-over, slow circles, like a meditation. I'd wake to the smell of it drifting down the hallway, and I'd always think, this is what safety smells like. We'd eat breakfast at the counter, half talking, half scrolling. I'd read headlines aloud. He'd nod without looking up. It was a language of comfort. Familiar, even when nothing was being said. We both worked from home, which meant we shared space without really sharing time. My desk was in the living room, his in the little office with that half-open door. Between us, the walls carried our separate lives. I'd hear him on calls, his professional voice, warm, confident, the kind of voice that made people feel things were under control. I used to love that about him. How sure he sounded, even when I didn't feel sure of anything. At lunch, he'd ask, "Want something?" And toss together sandwiches like a magician. Turkey, tomato, a smear of mustard too sharp, but somehow perfect. We'd sit side by side on the couch, watch something short, laugh at the same moments. To anyone watching, we were easy. Predictable in a good way. I told my sister once, "It's not fireworks, but it's steady." She said, "Steady is good." I believed her. We'd been through small storms. A move that stretched our savings. A miscarriage that stretched my heart. We'd grieve together quietly without words, because Daniel wasn't good with grief and I wasn't good with silence, but we found a rhythm between the two. I told myself those moments meant we could survive anything. The house became our world. On weekends, we cleaned. I'd hum while folding laundry. He'd whistle while vacuuming. Sometimes we'd pause in the hallway, bump shoulders, share a quick kiss before heading to our next chore. It was all so normal that I didn't notice how much of myself had curled into that normality, how much of my happiness depended on him doing exactly what he always did. But even in the comfort, little shifts began to happen. Not earthquakes, just tremors. He started checking his phone more often. The way his thumb hovered over the screen felt secretive, like there was something fragile he didn't want me to see. When I'd ask what was funny, he'd say, "Just a meme," but he'd turn the screen away as he said it. He worked later. The office door, once open enough for me to hear the hum of his keyboard, started to close almost fully. He said it was for focus. I believed him, or rather I chose to believe him. Dinner conversations thinned. I'd tell him about my day, the coworker who overshared, the new recipe I'd tried, the neighbor who left Christmas lights up in March, and he'd listen with that polite smile, the one that didn't quite reach his eyes. He'd nod, say, "That's nice," then drift into his own thoughts. I remember one night distinctly. I'd just finished cleaning the kitchen, hands still smelling of lemon soap. Daniel was sitting at the table, scrolling through something. I leaned against the counter and asked, "What are you reading?" He looked up, startled. Too startled for such an innocent question. "Just work stuff," he said quickly. I wanted to believe him. But my stomach fluttered the way it does when your instincts whisper louder than reason. He came over, kissed my forehead, and said, "You worry too much." And maybe I did. Because when you love someone long enough, you learn to second-guess your instincts, to protect the peace more than the truth. I remember going to bed that night feeling something small and heavy in my chest, like a pebble lodged under my ribs. I couldn't name it, but it stayed. The next morning, when I poured his vitamins into his palm, he smiled absently and said, "You take such good care of me." I wanted those words to mean what they used to. I wanted that warmth to be real. But behind his smile there was distance. A flicker. That was the first warning sign. Tiny, almost invisible. But that pebble in my chest? It rolled a little deeper, and when it did, I started watching more closely, because love, once shaken, doesn't settle back the same way. I didn't know it yet. But that was the last truly calm week of our marriage. The world still looked ordinary. Coffee, work, dinner, sleep. But under the surface, something had begun to hum. Something waiting for light. And soon that small, invisible tremor would turn into the first crack. The one that lets the truth slip through. It started small. The kind of moment you almost laugh off. Except it lingers. It was a Thursday morning, bright, cold, and sharp enough to wake you fully just by breathing. Daniel was already dressed when I came downstairs, sitting at the counter with his laptop open, coffee half drunk. Usually, he'd greet me with that quiet smile, a soft morning babe. But this time, he barely looked up. His fingers hovered above the keyboard like he was caught between sending something and hiding it. "Who were you talking to this early?" I asked, half joking. He closed the screen so fast the sound echoed. "No one. Just checking emails before the meeting." It should have been nothing. But the way his voice cracked on emails stayed with me. That tiny tremor. Later, I found his mug in the sink, the inside rim smudged with lipstick. Not my shade. Not even close. It was faint, maybe from a glass the day before, or maybe just a trick of light. But it was there. I stood there, staring at that pink half moon, my heartbeat drumming too fast for such a small thing. When he came home that evening, I told myself I wouldn't mention it. I wasn't ready to start a war over a stain. But once the thought exists, it multiplies. I watched the way he moved, too careful, too measured. When his phone buzzed on the counter, I reached for it, out of reflex, not intention. He snatched it up so quickly I pretended to drop a spoon just to cover the silence. He smiled, too wide. Work. Always work. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the faint tapping from his office. The door was half shut again, light bleeding through the crack. He said he was finishing a report. But reports don't make you laugh under your breath. Not like that. The next morning, I caught myself doing something I swore I'd never do, hovering outside his office like a ghost. I listened, holding my breath. He was talking softly. Not to himself. Not the firm business-like tone of a work call. This was warmer, lower, threaded with something I hadn't heard in years. Playfulness. "Yeah," he said, voice light. "No, I can't say that." "You'll get me in trouble." Pause. A soft laugh. His laugh, the one he used to save for me. I backed away before he could see my shadow in the doorway. My heart was pounding, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe he was joking with a coworker. Maybe I'd just forgotten what happiness sounded like on him. Still, I needed to know. That weekend, while he was out on a run, I checked his drawer, the one where he kept everything that didn't belong anywhere else. Receipts, random cords, empty envelopes, normal clutter. But tucked between old tax papers, I found something else, a crumpled note. It was written on a Post-it, torn at the edge. Just 5 words. "You look tired. Be kind. No name. No date. But the handwriting was neat and round. Not mine. It didn't scream affair. It whispered something worse. Intimacy. Someone who noticed his face. Someone who cared enough to tell him to rest. That night I asked him casually, "Anyone new on your team?" He nodded. "Yeah, a couple of people. Why?" "Just curious," I said. He smiled. The same polite, surface-level smile he gave strangers. "You're funny," he said. "Always checking up on me." I wanted to say, "Of course I check up on you," but the words caught. Instead, I laughed too. Pretended it was fine. But inside, that pebble from before started to feel like a stone. Over the next week, I watched. Not because I didn't trust him, but because I wanted to trust my own instincts again. I noticed patterns. He'd put his phone face down during dinner. He'd start running errands alone, groceries, hardware store, things we always did together. He'd come home smelling faintly of perfume I didn't wear. Something citrusy and bright. I started marking time by his absences. Then came the night of the charger. He left his work bag on the counter, rushing upstairs to take a call. The bag was half open. Inside, I saw his phone charger, but not his phone. A smaller one, silver, unfamiliar, sat beside it. A second phone. I picked it up. The screen was locked, but the wallpaper, a picture of the ocean, was one we'd never taken. My breath caught. I put it back exactly how I found it. My hands shook so hard I had to steady them on the counter. When he came back down, I smiled. I asked if he wanted tea. My voice sounded normal, too normal. He said, "Sure, thanks." And as I watched him stir honey into his cup, I realized how terrifying it is to sit across from someone you love and know that you're both pretending. That night, after he went to bed, I sat on the couch in the dark and whispered to no one. "I just want to know the truth. That's all I wanted." The truth. Not revenge, not drama, just honesty. And maybe that's what makes what I did next both foolish and inevitable. Because once you ask the universe for truth, it finds its way to you. Even if it means burning everything you thought was real. That's when I made the decision. Quiet, calm, almost kind in its logic. If he wouldn't tell me the truth willingly, I'd find a way to let it tell itself. And that's how the idea of the truth serum began, not from cruelty, but from desperation. Desperation to hear his voice one more time and know that every word was real. The morning I found the proof didn't feel like discovery. It felt like nausea. I remember it clearly, soft light creeping through the blinds, the kind that makes everything look innocent. Daniel had already left for work, which was unusual since he'd been homebound for months. "Client meeting downtown," he'd said, slipping on his blue shirt, the one I once called his lucky shirt, the one he hadn't worn in ages. When the door closed, silence filled the house in layers. I stood at the window and watched his car pull out of the driveway, watched the taillights disappear. Then I turned toward his office. The door was shut, fully this time. I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe reassurance, maybe a ghost of who we'd been. But my body moved before my mind could argue. I opened the door, half expecting the air to feel different, charged with guilt. Instead, it just smelled faintly of coffee and dust. His desk was neat, too neat. A folder sat slightly off-center, labeled with a client name I didn't recognize. Inside were spreadsheets, notes. All normal, until a photo slid out. Not of us, but of him at some cafe, laughing across the table at someone cropped out of frame. His hand was halfway to another's. The angle suggested intimacy, not business. And then, under the folder, I found the second phone. The silver one. It wasn't hidden well, just tucked under a notepad like he didn't think I'd ever look. I stared at it for a long time, every rational bone in my body screaming, "Don't." But curiosity isn't rational. It's survival. The lock screen was a simple pattern. And maybe fate has a cruel sense of humor because it unlocked on my first try. The same gesture he used on his old phone before upgrading. My heart sank at how easily I stepped into his private world. The first message at the top wasn't from work. It was from someone saved as MM. Good luck today, handsome. Don't forget to breathe. Daniel, you're the only one who remembers to tell me that. M. That's because I actually see you. Daniel, I wish I could see you now. I dropped the phone. It clattered against the desk and lit up again, showing more of their thread. 100 tiny exchanges like breadcrumbs of betrayal, coffee emojis, midday selfies, a photo of her wrist with a bracelet, one I'd seen before, in a Christmas photo Daniel showed me last year. His team holiday dinner. She was standing beside him smiling. How's Melissa? My throat closed. Scrolling felt like drowning. Each message was a weight pulling me further under. Can't talk. She's home. Wish you were here. Last night replaying in my head. That line, last night, was the one that split me open. The room blurred. I sat down on his chair, the one molded by his body, and it felt wrong beneath me. Everything felt wrong. I wanted to scream, but instead I whispered, "You liar," just once, and it sounded too small to fill the air. For hours, I stayed there, cycling through anger and disbelief. The part of me that still loved him wanted to find a misunderstanding hidden in the text. A project name, an inside joke. But the words were too naked. There was no business language here. Only intimacy. Only want. I thought about our nights together, how he'd been distracted, gentle but distant. I thought about every late meeting, every smile that didn't reach his eyes. And I realized something awful. This didn't start recently. It had roots. It had history. Maybe years. By the time I heard his car pull into the driveway, I'd put everything back exactly as I found it. Except for one thing, the photo of him laughing. I slid it into my pocket. He came in cheerful. "Hey, got caught in traffic," he said, tossing his keys onto the counter. He kissed my cheek like he always did. The same lips that had said, "I wish I could see you now." I nodded, smiled, and said, "Dinner's almost ready." My voice sounded like someone else's, calm, practiced. Inside, I was shaking. That night, I watched him eat. I memorized the way he chewed, the way he reached for the salt without looking, the way he talked about his meeting. I listened to the easy rhythm of his lies. And for the first time, I wasn't hurt. I was studying, observing, documenting. When he went upstairs to shower, I stayed at the table. The photo burned in my pocket. My mind replayed everything. His laughter behind the office door, the lipstick stain, the second phone. The truth wasn't just a wound anymore. It was a pulse, steady and undeniable. And still, beneath the rage, there was something softer. Grief. Not for the cheating itself, but for the slow death of everything I'd believed we were. I wanted to confront him right then, scream until the walls cracked. But something inside me whispered not yet. If I erupted too soon, he'd deny it, twist it, make me doubt my own eyes. I'd seen him do that before, not about cheating, but little things. Arguments he'd reframe until I ended up apologizing, so I decided to wait. To collect myself. To think, but waiting is dangerous. The truth festers. It turns patience into obsession. The next day I watched him more carefully. I caught him smiling at his phone again, thumb typing something quick. When he noticed me watching, he locked it instantly and said, "Just a text from the guys." That night, when he went to bed, I lay beside him in the dark, my body rigid. I could hear his breathing slow into sleep. I wanted to turn to him, to shake him awake and make him confess everything right then, to hear him say her name out loud, to watch his face when he realized I already knew. But instead, I whispered into the dark, "You'll tell me. One way or another, you'll tell me." I didn't know how yet, but I knew I couldn't keep living in the half-truth. I wanted control back. I wanted my sanity back. That's when my mind returned to the supplements, the ones I'd joked about with my friend weeks ago. The focus and clarity pills she claimed made her husband open up for hours, like therapy in a bottle. I'd laughed it off then. But now it didn't sound so funny. Maybe I could find my clarity, too, even if I had to manufacture it. That night, I ordered a bottle online, and as I clicked confirm purchase, I felt something shift inside me. The ache of betrayal hardened into purpose, because now I had proof. And soon, he'd have no choice but to give me the rest. When the bottle arrived, it didn't look like revenge. It looked like hope dressed in white plastic. A smooth, innocent cylinder labeled focus and clarity, for balanced energy and calm thought. I remember holding it in my hands, reading the instructions like they were scripture. Take 2 daily with water. Do not exceed recommended dosage. Store in a cool, dry place. It sat on the counter for a full day before I even touched it again. I'd set it beside his regular vitamins as if introducing it gently to the house. Every time I walked by, I felt it watching me. I wasn't proud of what I was planning. But I wasn't ashamed either. That's the strange thing about betrayal. It shifts the moral lines. You stop worrying about right and wrong and start thinking about what will bring you peace. For 2 days, I practiced. I'd open his vitamin bottle, pour them into my palm, line them up like little soldiers, then pour them back. I was waiting for the right night, when he'd be calm, when his guard would be down. Meanwhile, I studied him. I became quiet enough to hear the truth in the pauses between his words. He didn't notice. He'd grown too used to my silence, too comfortable with the version of me that didn't ask hard questions. He'd smile over dinner, ask how my day was, nod as if he cared. And I'd smile back as if I still believed him. But inside I was rehearsing. Every look, every movement, measured, deliberate. On the 3rd evening, I knew it was time. He came home humming, light on his feet, smelling faintly of something floral and expensive. Not mine. He tossed his keys into the bowl and said, "You look nice." I hadn't done anything different. That almost made me laugh. While he showered, I replaced his usual 2 vitamins with 2 of the clarity pills. They looked close enough. Same size, same coating, only a slightly deeper shade of white. I poured a glass of water and set it next to his usual spot on the table. Then I waited. He came downstairs, hair damp, phone in hand. He smiled like the man I married. I smiled back like the woman he thought he still had. "Long day?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, rubbing his neck. "Can't wait to sleep." "Take your vitamins first," I said. "You always forget," he chuckled. "You'd think after 9 years I'd remember." He picked up the pills, swallowed them, chased them with water. I felt my heartbeat sink with his throat as it moved. Then I exhaled, slowly. I didn't know how long it would take. The bottle said nothing about honesty. That part was all imagination. But I'd read enough reviews and articles about herbal supplements with mild mood-altering effects to believe something might shift. Even if it was just his perception, even if it was just placebo, maybe that was enough. The waiting was unbearable. We sat on the couch, TV flickering, some comedy, canned laughter filling the silence. I could feel his calm settling into me like a storm waiting for thunder. He leaned back, half closed his eyes, and sighed. "You ever feel like you're living 2 lives?" The question was so abrupt it made me flinch. "Sometimes," I said softly. He nodded slowly. "Yeah, it's exhausting." I looked at him, really looked, and saw the edges of guilt softening his face. His guard wasn't gone yet, but it was thinning. I said, "You can tell me, you know." "I won't get angry." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "It's complicated." "Complicated doesn't mean impossible," I said. He stared at the TV, the laughter track fading into static. Then he whispered, "You're too good to me." That was the first real crack. The next few days, I repeated the ritual. I swapped his vitamins every evening, keeping my tone light, my actions natural. He never suspected a thing. And slowly, I noticed changes. Subtle ones at first. He'd start talking more, small confessions wrapped in half-smiles. He admitted he hated his job, that he felt invisible most days, that he sometimes wondered if this, our life, was what he really wanted, or just what he'd fallen into. Each confession felt like a drop of poison disguised as truth. I told myself I wanted honesty, but the more he gave, the more I realized I'd never be ready for the whole thing. Still, I kept going. Because once you start pulling a thread, you can't stop until it unravels completely. At night, I'd lie beside him and feel his warmth and think, "You don't even know what you've done to me." But then another thought would creep in. "You don't know what I'm doing to you either." There was power in that symmetry. Cold, clean power. The guilt came in waves, brief, sharp, and gone again. I told myself it wasn't really deceit if all I wanted was the truth. I wasn't poisoning him. I was purifying the air between us. I wasn't hurting him. I was just removing the lies that hurt me. Still, something inside me had shifted. My love had become deliberate, strategic. I no longer hugged him out of affection but to sense the tension in his body. I no longer kissed him goodnight but to taste whether he was hiding something. Each evening, I'd watch him swallow the pills and wonder what version of Daniel would show up that night. The guilty one, the soft one, the liar, or the man I used to know. And then, one night, he finally asked me a question. "Do you ever wish we could start over?" His voice was low, careful. "Start over how?" I asked. He shrugged. "Like, meet again for the first time." "No history." "No, wait," I said. "Would you still choose me?" He didn't answer. That silence told me more than words ever could. That was the moment I decided it wasn't enough to hear his half-truths. I needed to hear everything. The parts he'd never admit unless something pushed him past the edge. So, the next day, I doubled the dose. 2 pills became 4. Not enough to harm him, I'd researched that obsessively, but enough, maybe, to make the walls inside him crumble. As I watched him take them that night, a calm settled over me. Not the peace of forgiveness, but the clarity of purpose. This wasn't about catching him anymore. It was about reclaiming the power he'd quietly taken from me, one secret at a time. I wanted him to speak every word he'd hidden, to pour out every truth until there was nothing left to hide behind. Because once a liar runs out of lies, all that remains is the person they really are. And I needed to meet that man, even if it destroyed what was left of us. The plan was simple now. One more night. One final conversation, and then I'd decide whether to stay or leave. But on my terms. The next evening, the air felt heavier. Even the dog seemed restless, pacing by the window. Daniel came home later than usual, his smile tight. I could see guilt clinging to his shoulders like a shadow. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just work stuff. Always work stuff." He took the pills without question, sat across from me, and smiled faintly. "You've been different lately," he said. Calmer. "I could say the same about you," I answered. He laughed softly. "Guess we're both changing." I nodded, heart steady. "Maybe tonight we finally talk about it." He raised an eyebrow, half amused. "About what?" "About everything." He didn't know it yet, but I'd already decided. Tonight was the night I'd let the truth out completely. No interruptions, no deflection. Just me, him, and the weight of what he'd done. Because there's a kind of mercy in confrontation. A clean break instead of a slow rot. And as I looked at him across the flickering TV light, I felt ready, not angry, not hysterical. Just steady, cold, clear. Whatever he said tonight, whatever came out of his mouth, I would listen. And when it was done, the lies would die right there on that couch. He took the pills. He swallowed, wiped his mouth, and smiled. The same smile he'd used to cover everything, but this time it didn't work. Something in his eyes changed. Not all at once, not dramatically, just a slow, uncertain flicker. Like he wasn't sure what part of himself he was supposed to be performing anymore. The TV was on, low volume, some sitcom pretending the world was simple. Outside, rain tapped at the window again, like the night it all began. Funny how truth likes to come back in the same weather. I muted the TV. The silence felt electric. He frowned. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," I said softly. "I just want to talk." He leaned back cautious like a man who's seen this movie before. About what? About us. That word hung there. Us. It didn't sound familiar anymore. For a moment, he said nothing. He just stared at me. Then he exhaled. Okay, what do you want to know? Everything. He laughed, a nervous, broken laugh. Everything's a lot. Start with the easy part, I said. When did you stop being honest with me? That's when the first real silence landed. The kind that isn't quiet, it's charged. His eyes darted away toward the table, then back to me. I don't know, he said finally. It wasn't one moment. I nodded slowly. Then pick one anyway. He rubbed his face. Maybe a year ago? Maybe longer. The words hit like cold air. I asked, was it her? He didn't ask who. He just froze. That told me everything. I need you to say it, I whispered. He looked down. Yes, a single word. Tiny. But it tore through the room like glass breaking. I waited, but once he started, he couldn't stop. The pills, or guilt, or both, whatever it was, the truth began to unspool, fast and jagged. It started as work stuff, he said. We were on a project together. Long hours. She made me feel seen, you know? Like I mattered again. Because I didn't make you feel that? I asked. My voice didn't shake. It was frighteningly calm. He shook his head quickly. No, it's not that. It's just, I don't know. You got so good at handling everything. The house, the schedules, the rules. I felt like a guest in my own life. And she fixed that? She reminded me who I used to be. There it was. The script every unfaithful man writes when he needs to sound poetic about betrayal. I let him talk. Let him explain how it wasn't about love, how he didn't mean to hurt me, how it just happened. Every sentence scraped something raw inside me. He looked at me then, eyes glassy. It wasn't physical at first, he said, like that made it noble. Just talking. Then it got harder to stop. Harder to stop, I repeated. That's one way to describe cheating. He flinched, then nodded. You're right, the clock ticked loudly. Even the dog had gone still, watching us like he knew. I asked the question I'd been carrying for weeks. Do you love her? He hesitated. The worst thing about hesitation is that it gives the truth time to bloom. I don't know, he said finally. I thought I did, but it's different. It's not, that word different. I hated it more than yes. My chest tightened, but I stayed steady. Did you ever plan to tell me? He looked guilty. I wanted to, but I didn't want to lose you. You didn't want to lose the person you were lying to, I said. That's not love. That's possession, his face twisted. That's not fair. Neither is betrayal, I said. He went quiet again. His hands trembled slightly. The pills were working, not magic, but pressure, breaking his restraint apart. He whispered, she said I was wasting my life, that I'd forgotten how to feel anything. And maybe she was right. I leaned forward. And did she make you feel alive again? Yes, he said. But it didn't last. Why? Because every time I saw her, I thought about you. I blinked. Don't turn this into some tragic love story, Daniel. He shook his head. It's not. It's a mess. I know I hurt you. I know I lied. But I swear Stop, I said. Don't swear anything. Not tonight. He fell silent. His breathing shallow. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The clock kept marking the distance between who we'd been and what we'd become. Then I did something I hadn't planned. I got up, went to the kitchen, and came back holding the bottle. I set it on the table between us. He stared at it. What's that? Your vitamins, I said. Only they're not. He frowned. What do you mean? I mean, I switched them, I said plainly. For something that helps you. Open up! He blinked, confused. Then realization hit. Wait, you gave me. I nodded. Nothing dangerous. Just honest. He stared at me, horror flickering in his eyes. You drugged me? No, I said calmly. I liberated you. He stood, angry now. What the hell, Anna? You can't just. I didn't do it to punish you, I interrupted. I did it to end this game. You've been feeding me lies for months. I just wanted to hear the truth once without you twisting it. He looked like he didn't know whether to yell or cry. "You could have just asked." "I did ask." My voice broke. "Every night I asked, and you smiled and told me nothing was wrong." Silence. He sat back down slowly, all the fight leaking out of him. "So now what?" he asked quietly. "Now," I said. "You tell me the rest. Everything. Then we decide what's left to save." He nodded, defeated, and then, for the next hour, he confessed everything. The details I didn't want but couldn't stop listening to. The meetings, the nights, the promises he made to her. The things he said about me, that I was good but distant, kind but predictable. Each word cracked something inside me, and yet strangely, I felt lighter. The truth hurt, but it was clean. No more shadows. No more pretending. When he finally stopped, he looked broken. "I don't know who I am anymore," he whispered. I looked at him and realized, neither did I. The rain outside turned heavier. It sounded like applause or maybe warning. I stood, grabbed my coat, and said, "You'll have plenty of time to figure that out." "Where are you going?" he asked. "To remember who I am without you." He reached for me, but I stepped back. "Don't," I said. "Not tonight." I opened the door and the wind hit me, cold, sharp, cleansing. Behind me, he called my name once, softly. I didn't turn around. The air smelled like rain and something ending. For the first time in months, I felt honest and free. I drove without knowing where I was going. Just followed the sound of my own breath, the rhythm of the wipers slicing through the rain. It was nearly midnight, the streets quiet, every passing streetlight flickering across the windshield like a pulse. My mind was blank at first, too full, then suddenly empty. I ended up at the park near the lake, the one where Daniel and I used to walk the dog when we first moved here. Back then, we used to talk about everything: work, dreams, the kind of house we wanted, the maybe babies we weren't ready for yet. Standing there now, it felt like walking into the echo of another life. The rain had thinned to mist. I sat on a bench, coat soaked through, fingers gripping the edge of the wood like I needed the world to stay still. The quiet was heavy but honest. For the first time in months, there were no questions left to ask. That's the strange mercy of truth. It doesn't fix anything, but it clears the fog. You finally see what's broken and what's just gone. When I got home, the house was silent. The TV still glowed faintly, casting ghost light on the couch. Daniel was there, sitting with his elbows on his knees, staring at the bottle. The white plastic looked almost innocent again. He didn't look up when I entered. "You came back." "For now," I said. He nodded. "I'm sorry." "I know," I replied. My voice wasn't cruel, just tired. But sorry doesn't put anything back together. He looked up then, eyes red but calm. "Do you hate me?" I thought about it. "No, I just don't trust you. And I don't trust myself around you either." He swallowed hard. "Are you leaving?" "I don't know yet." That was the truth. I didn't know. Because love doesn't disappear the moment trust does. It lingers, confused and bruised. You can love someone and still know you can't stay. I went upstairs and packed a small bag. Not everything. Just what I needed to breathe elsewhere for a while. Clothes, my journal, my toothbrush. The act of packing felt like pulling my name back out of the house piece by piece. Before I left, I stood by the doorway and looked at him one last time. "You should get rid of that phone," I said. He nodded slowly. "I already did. Maybe he had. Maybe he hadn't. It didn't matter anymore. I spent the next few weeks at my sister's place. Her guest room smelled like lavender and paint. She didn't ask for details at first, just handed me tea, sat beside me, and let silence do the talking. It's strange how ordinary life keeps going even when yours has stopped. The world doesn't pause for heartbreak. There are still grocery runs, still emails, still the slow grind of everyday sound. But eventually, the numbness starts to crack, and something new seeps through. In that quiet space, I began to rebuild. Not my marriage, but myself. I started running again. I read books I'd abandoned. I cooked without thinking about portion sizes for two, and one morning, I realized I'd gone a whole hour without thinking about him. That felt like a milestone. Daniel tried to reach out, of course. A few texts, a few calls, apologies, promises, a request for therapy. I read them all. I replied to none. Sometimes not responding is the loudest answer you can give. Weeks turned to months. The weight of what happened began to shift from sharp pain to dull understanding. He hadn't just broken my trust. He'd forced me to see how much of my life I'd built around keeping the peace, how much I'd mistaken routine for happiness. And maybe, in some dark way, I was grateful. Because pain, when it stops being raw, becomes clarity. By the time I went back to the house, just to collect the rest of my things, it didn't feel like ours anymore. His shoes by the door looked out of place. The kitchen smelled different, emptier. I moved through it slowly, touching the edges of what used to be home. Daniel wasn't there. He'd left me a note on the counter. Just one line, "I hope you find peace. You deserve that much." I folded it and tucked it into my bag, not because I needed it, but because it felt like the period at the end of a very long sentence. Driving away that day, I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. There was nothing left to mourn. What we had died long before the confessions began. Now, when I think about him, it's not anger that comes. It's distance, a kind of quiet acceptance, because the truth didn't just expose him, it revealed me. The version of me who'd rather believe a lie than face loneliness. The version who mistook comfort for love. That woman doesn't live here anymore, and when people ask what happened, I just say, "We told the truth, and it cost us everything." But there's a strange peace in that, because even though the truth shattered what we had, it gave me back what I'd lost long before him, myself. It's been over a year now. Enough time for the shock to settle, for the ache to quiet into something almost tender. I live in a small apartment on the edge of the city. Nothing fancy, but the light hits the windows in the morning just right. I've learned to love silence again. I make coffee for one, and somehow it tastes stronger that way. People always ask if I regret it. Swapping the pills, forcing the truth, blowing up a life that looked perfect from the outside. And my answer is always the same. No, I don't regret finding out. I regret how long I let myself live without knowing, because the truth, as brutal as it was, gave me back my eyes. I see people differently now, not as promises but as choices. Every day, every word, every silence. All of it is a choice, and I finally stopped choosing denial. Daniel and I haven't spoken since the divorce papers were signed. I don't hate him. In a strange way, I wish him well. I hope he found whatever he was chasing. Because I found something too. Peace that doesn't depend on anyone else's version of honesty. Sometimes I still dream about that night. The look on his face when the truth finally came out. The disbelief, the pain, the release. In those dreams, I don't feel anger anymore. Just a quiet kind of gratitude. Because that was the moment I stopped being afraid of hearing the truth. There's something sacred in finally knowing. Even if it ruins you, it rebuilds you cleaner. If you're listening to this and you're where I was, half living in suspicion, half hoping you're wrong, I want to tell you something I wish someone had told me. You can survive the truth. You can even grow from it, but you cannot survive the lie forever. It will rot you from the inside until you mistake comfort for love and silence for safety. Don't wait for the truth to sneak up on you. Go find it. Whatever it costs, it's cheaper than living blind. I'm not proud of everything I did. I crossed lines I didn't think I would. But pain changes you. It shows you how far you'll go just to feel steady again. And if you're lucky, it brings you back to yourself, whole and unafraid. I smile more now. Real smiles, the kind that reach the eyes. I've started painting again, running again, sleeping without the weight of another person's secrets pressing on my chest. The dog's still with me, older now, slower, but he still curls by my side like he always did. Maybe he's the only one who saw everything and still stayed. I've learned that healing doesn't come as a sudden revelation. It's a quiet, stubborn thing, small choices, Small breaths. Small moments of forgiveness that add up until one day you realize the pain has turned into a story instead of a wound. And this story is mine. So, if you've made it this far, thank you. Thank you for listening, for holding space for someone else's truth. Maybe you saw yourself in some part of it. Maybe you've been the one betrayed, or maybe you've been the one hiding something. Either way, I hope it reminds you that the truth always finds its way to the surface. Sometimes whispered, sometimes shouted, but always arriving right on time. And now, I'll leave you with this. The truth doesn't destroy love. It just reveals whether it was ever real. Did you like my story? Please like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far this story of mine travels, because every time someone hears it, I feel a little less alone, and a little more certain that telling the truth, no matter how much it costs, is always worth it. End of story.